Good day, grade 8s. I'm Mrs. Milani Lowe, and today we are going to look at the effects of an electric current, and specifically the heating effect, the magnetic effect, and the chemical effect. We are going to start with the heating effect. Now, as all of you know, a current can heat a resistance wire, for example, the filament in a bulb. If electrical energy is transferred to the particles in the filament, then the filament heats up and it produces light. But we can also see the heating effect of an electric current in the element of a kettle, in the bars of a heater, in the element of a geyser, as well as in the element of the stove plate, like in this picture, a spiral type stove plate. Now we also have to look at fuses. When the current in a circuit becomes too large for the components to handle, the fuse heats up and it melts and it breaks the circuit. So fuses are safety devices that reduce the danger when using electricity. We get different kinds of fuses. In the first picture, we have a very simple glass cartridge fuse. So the thin wire within this fuse can heat up, and when it melts off, it breaks the circuit, and then the other components cannot be damaged. And then you can also get a blade fuse like this orange fuse here in the second picture, and that you will see in our motor cars. It's very generally used in motor cars. Now, how does a fuse work? If there's a normal current, the current just passes through the fuse normally. But the moment that there's some error in your circuit, something causes the current to become too large, then the filament inside this fuse heats up, it gets red hot, it melts off and it breaks, and then the circuit is broken and the current cannot flow through all the other components. Now, if we look at a circuit diagram, then we can see you have a battery or electric cells. You have a load like an electric bulb, a resistance, and there's a fuse. Now, if the current for some reason becomes too large in the circuit, the fuse will heat up, that wire will melt off, and the moment that wire melts off, the current cannot flow, so the bulb and the resistance and any other electrical component is then protected, and it cannot be damaged by the current that is too large. Now, the second thing under the heating effect of a current that we must look at is a short circuit. Now, a circuit can overheat if a short circuit occurs. A short circuit can occur when an electric current takes the path of lowest resistance. So normally, if you look at the circuit diagram here, the current will flow from the battery through the bulb back to the battery, and you will have a proper electric circuit. But now, if there is a short circuit, meaning that there is a path of lowest resistance, like in this case, a wire is connected directly across the terminals of the cell, then the current will start following the path of lowest resistance, meaning the current will flow through the wire where there's no resistance in. So the current will not flow through the bulb, but it will flow through the short circuit, and this can then cause a danger in your circuit. It can cause the circuit to overheat. So the example is when a conductor is connected directly to both terminals of a cell or a battery, and this is now in this diagram, that is how a short circuit will work. So the bulb will stop working, but the circuit will keep on flowing, but it will flow through the path of least resistance, and this can cause an overheat in a circuit. Now, secondly, we are going to look at the magnetic effect of an electric current. Now, the question here is, have you ever wondered how a lock like this one in the picture works? You've seen these locks on doors and on gates, and how do those locks work? Now, the scientist who discovered this was Hans Oersted, and he did an experiment in 1820 already, many years ago. So what he discovered by accident is that when a current is flowing through a conductor and you bring a magnetic needle close to the conductor, then the magnetic needle starts to rotate. And then he realized that when a conductor is carrying current, if current flows through a conductor, it also has a magnetic field around it. So important, when an electric current flows through a conductor, it causes a magnetic field around the conductor. And now these days we can use this to make a temporary magnet. So that means we can switch the magnet on and off. While the current flows, the magnet is magnetic, but when the current doesn't flow, the magnet is not magnetic. And this is called an electromagnet. So we make a magnet using an electric current. So now this is also giving us a good description of an electromagnet. An electromagnet is a temporary magnet made by winding wire around an iron core. So what do we need to make an electromagnet? We need a few torch batteries or electric cells. We need a piece of conducting wire, copper wire, insulated wire, and an iron nail. Now what do we do with these things? Firstly, you have to wrap the wire around the nail to form a coil around the iron nail, and then you connect the terminals of a battery then to the wire. So one end of the coil is connected to the positive or negative terminal of the cell. The other end is then connected to the other terminal of the cell. So now your electromagnet is switched on, and if it's switched on, you can see that this iron nail, which is normally not magnetic by itself, is now suddenly magnetic, and it's able to pick up some paper clips, iron paper clips. It's very important that the core of your electromagnet must be made of iron. It must be a magnetic metal like iron, and then it will magnetize because of the current flowing through this coil. The current then causes a magnetic field. It magnetizes the iron core or the iron nail, and now the iron nail becomes magnetic and it can pick up those paper clips. Now, just to revise or just to summarize, is what is the purpose of each component of the electromagnet? The battery or the cells, what do? They provide energy for the current to flow. Without a current, we're not going to have any magnetic field. The coil of wire turns, the coil of wire that we turn around the iron nail, what is that for? That is for the current to flow through so that a magnetic field is created. And what is the purpose of that iron nail, that iron core inside the coil? That is to concentrate the magnetic field around the coil to make the magnetic field stronger, so that you have a stronger electromagnet. Now the question is also, how can we make an electromagnet stronger? Now it's very obvious. If you have one cell, your electromagnet will be weak, but if you have more cells, if you add the number of cells in series, or you increase the number of cells in series, or you use a stronger current, then your electromagnet will also be stronger. It will be able to pick up more of the paper clips or anything that you want to pick up. And then also, if you have less wire turns around your iron nail, the magnet will be weaker. But if you have more wire turns in your coil, your magnet will be much stronger. So there are two ways in which you can make an electromagnet stronger. You can increase the number of cells, and you can increase the number of wire turns in the coil. Now, where do we use electromagnets in everyday life? We can use it in a very simple doorbell. Inside, you can see there's a wire coil around an iron core, and if you switch it on, this little hammer can then hit the dome of the bell, and then it will make a ringing sound. You also find electromagnets in the back of loudspeakers. You can also find huge electromagnets in scrap yards where they want to separate different metal objects from each other. Also in the electric fan or electric motor of something like a fan, and then definitely in those magnetic locks that we see on gates and doors. Now, thirdly, we are going to look at the chemical effect of an electric current. Now, the question is, what will happen if an electric current flows through a copper chloride solution? Now, I truly hope and believe that your teacher will demonstrate this to you in class, or at least show you a video on how this is taking place. But if you let a current flow through a blue copper chloride solution, you will connect the one black electrode, the one carbon electrode to the positive terminal of a battery, and the other one to the negative terminal. And then after a while, what will you observe? You will observe a reddish brown copper layer that forms around the negative electrode. So you will see that this copper chloride solution, which is a compound, now you can see pure copper at the one electrode, and at the other electrode, I don't know if the picture is clear enough, but you will see gas bubbles forming around the positive electrode of this apparatus or setup. And those bubbles smell like jig, so that tells us that these bubbles is chlorine gas. So what happens if an electric current is passed through a copper chloride solution? Yes, you're correct. An electric current causes a chemical reaction. So when an electric current passes through a copper chloride solution, what happens to the copper chloride? It decomposes. It breaks down into copper and chlorine. So the word equation for that is we start with a compound copper chloride. Through the electrical current, a chemical reaction takes place. That is why we need to use an arrow to show that something changes. A chemical reaction, a chemical change takes place to break up the copper chloride into pure copper metal and chlorine gas. An electric current can break down a compound into simpler substances or elements. So like in this case, copper chloride is broken down into copper and chlorine. So this process is called electrolysis. So let's just break down the word electrolysis. It consists of two parts. Electro refers to an electric current. The second part of the word is lysis, which means to break up or to separate. So electrolysis means that we use an electric current to break up a compound like copper chloride. Now, copper chloride is normally a blue crystalline substance. It's just blue crystals. It cannot conduct electricity in its solid state, so therefore we need to dissolve it in water first to make this blue copper chloride solution. And this blue copper chloride solution is called the electrolyte because the electric current can be conducted through this electrolyte to make this chemical reaction happen. So if we look at the diagram again of the electrolytic cell, this whole setup is called an electrolytic cell. So what do we need? We need a source of energy, battery or electric cells. We need two carbon rods because carbon can conduct electricity into the solution. The one is connected to the positive terminal of the cell, the other electrode is connected to the negative terminal of the cell, and then you will observe that copper metal, this reddish brown layer, forms around the negative cathode, and the chlorine bubbles, that gas that smells like jig, is formed around the positive anode. And this is then the setup of an electrolytic cell, and you have to practice to draw this and to label it correctly. So let us just look at the function of each component. The electric cells provide energy for the current to flow. Without a current, there will be no chemical reaction. Those carbon electrodes, those two black rods, is there to conduct the electric current into the electrolyte. Now normally the electrons are made of graphite or carbon, and the center of the core of your pencil is also graphite. It's not lead, it's graphite, it's carbon, so you can sharpen a pencil on both sides, and then you also have a graphite or a carbon rod. Now the electrode where copper forms is the cathode, and it's normally negatively charged. The electrode where chlorine forms is the positive anode. And then I have the sentence here to help you remember where what forms. So the sentence is the negative copper cat smells chlorine at the positive anode. So negative copper, that's where copper forms at the negative electrode, and the cat stands for cathode. So at the cathode you find copper, and that is the negative electrode. Smells chlorine at the positive anode. So try and remember the sentence, the negative copper cat smells chlorine at the positive anode. Then you won't get confused at what forms where. And the electrolyte, of course, that is the blue copper chloride solution, and that solution conducts the electric current. Now we can also do have the electrolysis of water. Water consists of hydrogen and oxygen. If you pass an electric current through water, you will find that water breaks down in hydrogen and oxygen into the two elements. So you can also break down water, which is a compound, into two elements. So a current can cause a chemical reaction. Electrical energy is converted into chemical energy. And then lastly, where do we use electrolysis in everyday life? We can use it for electroplating, is to cover iron with copper or silver or chromium. All the taps and shiny objects that we use on cars and in our kitchens and bathrooms are iron objects covered with a layer of chromium through electroplating or electrolysis. And electrolysis can also be used to prepare chemicals like chlorine. And the chlorine is what we use to disinfect our drink water. And then lastly, we can also cover iron plates with zinc to prevent rusting. Those are the zinc plates that we use on our roofs. So that the iron plates are covered with a layer of zinc. The zinc does not rust as easily, and then it prevents our roofs from rusting. And that process is also a type of electrolysis, but specifically called galvanizing. So we've done the three effects of a current: heating effect, magnetic effect, and chemical effect. And that is all for today. Thank you very much for listening.